What's going on, guys? It's NYPrepper here. In this video, we're going to do another penetration test with the 4570. In the last video I did, we tested some bear loads. We tested the Buffalo Boar and HSM bear loads, and we shot them into some 2x10s at 25 yards. And we're going to do the same thing today. We're going to shoot into some 2x10 Douglas Fir framing joists. And we're going to be using expanding bullets today, and we're going to see what kind of penetration we get with these high velocity expanding bullets out of the 4570. And we're also going to see what kind of expansion we get, whether the bullets separate, whether the jacket separates from the core, whether the bullet penetrates in a straight line, and we're going to see how deep they penetrate, and then we're going to be able to compare how they perform to other cartridges that I've tested already. All right, and so the gun that we're going to be shooting these rounds out of today is my Marlin 1895 4570 with a 22-inch barrel. I've customized it probably about 10 years ago. This was my very first rifle that I ever owned. It's about 20 years old. I got this in 2001 as a present for my 16th birthday from my father. I extended the magazine tube all the way out so it holds 8 rounds now. It's a 22-inch barrel. It's a walnut stock and blued steel. I've done a lot of custom things to this rifle. I added this premium recoil pad. I've upgraded some of the internal parts here. I added this XS lever rail on the top, and I mounted a scout scope, which is a forward mounted scope, and this is a Burris 2-to-7 power by 32 millimeter objective. All right, so we're going to be shooting 3 loads today. We're going to be shooting the first one is going to be the Hornady 325 grain Flex Tip, and that one is going to be traveling at 2,075 feet per second. Okay, and this is a very popular deer hunting round for the 4570 and even also for hog. And I'm curious to see what kind of penetration we get with this bullet here and how well the jacket stays with the core, and how deep it penetrates and stuff like that. Then we're going to go and do some Buffalo Boar here. We got this Buffalo Boar 350 grain Barnes TSX Triple Shock X bullet. These Triple Shock X bullets are absolutely impressive. I've tested them in my 416 Ruger and my 300 Win Mag. They perform extremely well. They're solid copper bullets, so they have very deep penetration and very controlled expansion. And this is a 350 grain bullet, and it's traveling at 2,150 feet per second and generating 3,600 foot-pounds of muzzle energy. So it's an extremely powerful round here. And then finally, we're going to test this 405 grain jacketed flat nose bullet, and this one's going to be moving at 2,000 feet per second. Extremely heavy bullet and at a very high velocity, 2,000 feet per second. All right, both of these are from Buffalo Boar, and so we're going to see what kind of expansion we get. We're going to see how well they retain their mass and how well they stay together if the jacket doesn't separate from the core, how deep they penetrate, whether they stay in a straight line. And our target is going to be 25 yards away, all right, the 2x10 boards that I mentioned. And so let me just go over there and show you guys what they look like. All right, guys, so we got these 2x10s that I cut to 1 foot lengths, and I screwed them together. There's 17 of them here. These are Douglas Fir 2x10s, and we're going to see how many boards this penetrates. I don't think it's going to go more than maybe 5 or 10 boards in the absolute max. I just added these extra boards at the end for some extra weight so it keeps it stable because of the massive energy dump. I don't want the boards to just fly off after every shot. And so in case you guys are wondering, the temperature right now is 32 degrees Fahrenheit. So here I got my Kestrel. It's actually 31 degrees now, so the temperature's falling. All right, and temperature does have an effect on velocity depending on the types of powders you use. If you're using temperature sensitive powders or not, Temperature sensitive powders will lose some velocity at these types of lower temperatures here, and we have a relative humidity of 60%. All right, so any of you ballistics nerds out there like me, if you want to know what the conditions are here, the atmospheric conditions, we're shooting at a safe range. This is a controlled environment. This is a safe environment. This is a legal shooting range. I'm not promoting any firearms or ammunition. I'm not trying to sell anything here. I'm not being sponsored by any of these companies. I'm doing this for entertainment and research purposes. Okay, this video is for research purposes. I'm not promoting anything, and we're going to be shooting from that bench right there. Okay, so let's get started. All right, guys, so now we're going to shoot the 405 grain jacketed flat nose traveling at 2,000 feet per second. All right, we're going to take 2 shots. So let's see what happens here. The recoil is going to be tremendous. Alright, second shot with the 405 grain. Recoil was not that bad. We knocked the wood down. Alright guys, so now we're going to shoot these 350 grain Triple Shock X bullets from Barnes, and they're traveling at 2,150 feet per second. That's a very high velocity. So let's see what happens here. It looks like they were shooting about 3 inches higher than my point of aim, and that's just because of the extreme velocity. So I'm going to do one more shot, and I'm going to aim a little bit lower. Alright, so we're going to redo that. Alright guys, so you can see these were my 2 shots here with the 405 grain jacketed flat nose. They were exactly where I was aiming. The point of impact was the same as my point of aim, but these two right here were the TSX, and they were about probably this high, so about 3 inches high at 25 yards. I was aiming right here, and they impacted here, and then I was aiming in this area, and it was also high. So I'm going to redo this. I'm going to take 2 more shots, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to aim somewhere down here so I can get the bullets to land in this general area here. All right guys, so we're going to redo the shots with the 350 grain TSX because they shot a little high and they shot a little too close together. So I want to get at least one more shot into some fresh wood because they're kind of close together. Alright guys, we had perfect hits on those. So now we're just going to redo the Hornady Flex Tip and see what happens. Alright guys, so I redid the 2 shots with the 350 grain TSX. These are the 2 with the 350 grain TSX after I redid them, and it was perfect. I was aiming right in this area and my impact was right up here. So because it's a higher velocity and it's a lightweight bullet, it's impacting about 3 inches higher, at least at this distance of 25 yards. Alright guys, so we're going to take 2 more shots with the Hornady Flex Tip 325 grain, and it's traveling at 2,075 feet per second. Let's see what happens. Alright guys, let's take these pieces of wood apart and see what happened. Just wanted to show you guys how this wood got cracked on the bottom here. This was after I took the shot with the 325 grain Hornady. And look at how it split all these pieces of wood here. Okay, very impressive. So let's take this apart and see what happened. All right, guys, so I got the boards back home now, and I've unscrewed all of them, and I want to share the results from this test, which were very interesting. So the 325 grain Hornady Flex Tip penetrated through 4 2x10s, and also the 405 grain jacketed flat nose from Buffalo Boar also penetrated through 4 2x10s. Okay, both of them penetrated the exact same depth, and they both held their shape pretty well. They mushroomed up properly. They didn't separate. The jacket and the core stayed together for both of those bullets, for the 325 grain Hornady and the 405 grain Buffalo Boar. They both held together. The core and the jacket stayed together. They mushroomed well, so that's very good. And they both penetrated through 4 2x10s, which is not the greatest. I was thinking for, a rifle, I would see more like 6 or 7 boards, so I'm a little bit disappointed at that. My 500 Smith & Wesson Magnum with the 500 grain Hornady XTP traveling at 1400 feet per second out of my 6.5-inch barrel Smith & Wesson X-frame revolver also penetrates 4 2x10s. Okay, so these 45-70 soft points penetrate the same depth as my 500 Smith & Wesson. So I was expecting a little bit more than that, but what I'd like to do actually is I'd like to repeat this test and try it at maybe 100 yards or 50 yards and see if the penetration is a little bit deeper at a longer distance, because these soft point bullets, the 405 grain jacketed flat nose and the 325 grain Hornady Flex Tip, they're very soft bullets, and they're traveling around 2,000 feet per second or over 2,000 feet per second, and that's a lot of velocity. And at 25 yards, they probably expand tremendously, and I'll show you guys how much expansion there was. There was quite a bit of expansion, but I'd like to maybe redo the test at some point in the near future and go further out, maybe 100 yards, and see what these bad boys can do at 100 yards, okay? And so the best performer here today, as expected, was the 350 grain Barnes Triple Shock X from Buffalo Boar. All right, that one was traveling at 2,150 feet per second, according to Buffalo Boar. I never actually chronographed any of these loads, so I'm just going off of what the box says. So again, the 350 grain Buffalo Boar Barnes Triple Shock X traveling at 2,150 feet per second penetrated the most. It penetrated through 6 2x10s, okay? I took 4 shots with the 350 grain TSX, and 3 out of the 4 shots penetrated through 6 2x10s, and 1 of them got stuck in the 5th board, okay? But I'm gonna discount that one because that was one of the 2 shots here that were really close to each other. So I think the fact that they were so close to each other, I think that had something to do with it. Maybe it collided with one of the other bullets or something, I don't know. But so the 350 grain Barnes TSX penetrated 2 more boards than the 405 grain flat nose and the 325 grain Hornady Flex Tip, okay? So if you do the math, that's about 30% more penetration, okay? And that's at 25 yards. 6 2x10s, that's pretty good penetration, okay? That's the same level of penetration as my 500 Smith & Wesson Magnum. So my 500 Smith & Wesson Magnum can penetrate 6 2x10s with 400 grain solid copper bear loads, and it can penetrate 8 to 9 2x10s with hard cast bear loads, just for comparison purposes. And again, these bullets were penetrating roughly the same as my 500 Smith & Wesson Magnum with soft points, okay? My 500 Smith & Wesson with 500 grain XTP soft points penetrate around 4 2x10s, and these 4570 405 grain jacketed flat nose soft points penetrated 4 2x10s, and also the 325 grain Hornady Flex Tip penetrated through 4 2x10s. And again, the best performer was the 350 grain Barnes TSX, which penetrated through 6. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to go through these right now, board by board, and I'm going to show you guys exactly what the damage was, and then we're going to pull these bullets out. We're going to weigh them, see what kind of weight retention we got. I'm going to take some measurements with my trusty calipers, and we're going to see what kind of expansion we got. So here's board number 1, okay? Just going to show you guys board number 1, all these big 458 holes, okay? 458 caliber holes. All right, here's the back of board number 1. You can see that all of these 4 shots here were from the 350 grain TSX, and you could see the TSX had basically no expansion at all in the first board. But here you can see the jacketed flat nose with the exposed lead nose, the 400 grain jacketed flat nose, is already expanding quite a bit. Okay, you can see here we have this exit hole that's probably, I would say, almost 3/4 of an inch. And then here we have the one up here on the upper left, and then down at the bottom is the Hornady 325 grain Flex Tip. You can see it's starting to expand a little bit, but not as much of an exit hole as the 405 grain jacketed flat nose. I mean, that's a pretty big exit hole for just the first board. All right, so here we're going to move on to the second board now. And you can see in the second board how massive these holes are getting. Okay, here we have the 350 grain TSX, which is not showing really any expansion at this point at all. But we can see that the 405 grain jacketed flat nose has some massive holes here in the second board. I mean, just look at how big this hole is. This is like the size of a shotgun slug. And then the 325 grain Hornady Flex Tip here and here are also quite big, but not as big as the 400 grain jacketed flat nose. So all of them penetrated through the fourth board. Okay, and let's just see some of the exit holes here. Look at this massive exit hole, guys. This is from the 325 grain Hornady Flex Tip. Look at that damage. Okay, even though it only penetrated through 4 2x10s, I would not want to be hit by this. Okay, any game animal that's hit by one of these bullets is going to go down quick. I mean, I could pretty much fit my whole thumb in this hole here. Okay, look at that massive hole. What I'm actually going to do right now is I'm actually going to just quickly measure the diameter of this hole. It's just really massive here. All right, look at this hole here, guys. 0.88 inches. It's just absolutely monstrous. Here we have from the 405 grain jacketed flat nose. Look at these massive holes here on the exit holes. Let's just measure the diameter of this one here. You're looking at over an inch. Okay, just absolutely massive. And then here you can see the Barnes TSX is just starting to open up. Let's do a little measurement here. And this one is at 0.55 inches, okay, but most of them are not really that, not expanding that much, 0.58. So they're not really expanding that much yet in the second board. All right, so now things get interesting in the third board here. Here we got the third board. You know, the board cracked, as you can see, but just look at this monstrous hole from the 405 grain jacketed flat nose. Look at these two big holes here. That's going to do a lot of damage if you're deer hunting with this thing. Look at these big wound channels here. This hole on the bottom is the 325 grain flex tip hole. Just look at this wound channel, guys. Look at how big that is. I'm going to measure that just so you guys can see. I mean, it's just absolutely monstrous. Let's see, 1.3 inches. I mean, that's just almost 1.5 inch wide wound channel there in the wood. All right, and that's in wood, so imagine what it'll do to living tissue, okay? Let me show you guys the back now of the third board. It's a little bit hard to hold because it's cracked. Look at this big exit hole here from the 405 grain jacketed flat nose. That's just absolutely insane. Here's the exit hole from the 325 grain Hornady Flex Tip. Here we have some of the exit holes from the 350 grain Barnes, and you can see they're starting to open up a little bit. So here's two holes right here. Here's one and here's one, and they're starting to open up a little bit here. The Barnes TSX. Okay, so it's starting to open up a little. And there's the wound channels from the Barnes TSX. They're not quite as dramatic when you compare it to... So here's the wound channel from the Hornady 325 grain. And here's the wound channels from the Barnes TSX. All right, you can see the difference in expansion. All right, and that's just because it's a solid copper bullet. And those solid copper bullets, obviously, they don't expand as easily and as dramatically. And here we have board number 4. Let me just try to pull this all together for you guys here. Let me see if I can do this. All right, here we have board number 4. Look at this giant hole here, guys. This is from the 405 grain jacketed flat nose here. I mean, these holes are just absolutely insane. Let me see if I can lay this down somewhere so you guys can really take it in. I mean, just look at how big these holes are, guys. This is just absolutely insane. This is the 405 grain jacketed flat nose, 405 grain, and then these 4 here. These 4 here. Let's see if I can hold these together. So here we have the Barnes TSX, and they're starting to get bigger now. All right, these holes are quite large, but they're still not as big as the jacketed flat nose, but they're getting bigger. As you can see, all of these holes are just absolutely massive. I mean, look at that wound channel. You know, that's just insane. Okay, let me just show you guys the exit holes here. This is the 4th board again. Exit holes are getting pretty massive. Just wanted to show you this one huge hole from the 405 grain jacketed flat nose. Look at this hole, guys. Look at that. That is just absolutely insane. You know, you're looking at over a 1 inch diameter hole here in the wood, 1.09. All right, look at that huge hole. I mean, look at this is the hole from the 325 grain flex tip, also about 1 inch. But the 405 grain jacketed flat nose takes the cake for the biggest hole. Okay, makes the biggest holes. Look at this exit hole. Look at that, guys. Just absolutely, utterly insane. And then here we have board number 5. This is where most of the bullets were stuck. Here we have one of the Hornadys. All right, one of the Hornadys here is stuck here, and we have another Hornady stuck in here. Okay, and you could see both of these bullets, both of these Hornadys have a nose forward position, which is very good. That means that it was able to maintain a straight line. It didn't tumble or anything. Here we have another one of the Hornadys. Okay, and here we have one of the 405 grain jacketed flat nose bullets. I had it taped up so I didn't lose it. Look at this massive lead ball here. I mean, just look at the size of this hunk of lead. This is just absolutely insane. Look at this huge piece of lead here, and look at the damage that it left in the wood here. It was just sitting like that. It was also in a nose forward position, which is really good. I'm going to redo this test at 100 yards and we'll see what happens. But so here's one of the 405 grain jacketed flat nose. Here's the two Hornadys. Again, both of these got stuck at the same exact depth in the 5th board. Here's the other jacketed flat nose. We got it taped up again. Look at that expansion we got on this bullet here. All right, look at that. Absolutely insane. It was inside the wood like that. Okay, and this is the 5th board. All right, so 4 boards. It penetrated through 4 boards, and here's the hole from one of the Barnes TSX. It's still going through the wood. Okay, and then now let's move on to board number 5, or I'm sorry, board number 6. Okay, here's board number 6, and you can see that there's these huge dents in the wood here from that 405 grain jacketed flat nose. Look at this big dent here. Here's another big dent. Here we have 1, 2, 3, and 4. These are the 4 Barnes TSX. This is the one Barnes TSX that got stuck in the 6th board. Let me pull that one out for you guys. And I think it must have struck something, because you see that it's kind of a little bit mangled here. I'm wondering if it struck a hard object like a knot or something like that. You could see it didn't really expand uniformly. So I'm guessing it may have hit something inside of the wood. All right, but that was in the 6th board. But look at this giant hole here from one of the other Barnes TSXs. Let me just measure that for you guys so you can see how wide this wound channel is. This wound channel is 1 1/4 inches almost, 1.17 inches. It's a huge wound channel here. Okay, so that's board number 6. And let's look at the back of board 6 just to show you guys the exit holes here. All right, here's one of the exit holes. Here's one, okay? And now we're on to board number 7, okay? And this is the board that trapped all of the Barnes TSX bullets. None of them passed through the 7th board. We have one stuck in here. You could see it has a nose forward position, which is very good. We have another one stuck in this piece of wood here. You can see it went in here and it didn't exit, but it almost exited, okay? So, you know, pretty close to exiting. I mean, it's bulging out the back here. I mean, we could even say 6.5 if we really want to be that detail oriented. And then here we have another Barnes TSX, okay? Stuck in the 7th board again, all right? So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to pull these bullets out, weigh them, take some measurements. So stay tuned. All right, guys, I got my reloading scale here, and what we're going to do is we're just going to check the zero, make sure that it's zeroed out. This is 100 gram weight, and we got 100.02, so that's good enough. All right, so we know that we're zeroed out. So let's start with the 405 grain jacketed flat nose. So this is what they looked like, okay? You could see they mushroomed up very nicely and held their shape. You know, they held together. They didn't separate. The jacket stayed with the core, okay? And so let's weigh them right now. Let's see what we got. 353.5 grains for one of them. And the other one was 358 grains. So they lost about 50 grains of lead. So that's not terrible. You know, you're still looking at some pretty high weight retention there. It's a 400 grain bullet and it lost 50 grains. So if you do the math, you're still looking at about 90% weight retention. So that's very good. Now let's go to the Hornady Flex Tip, which actually retained more mass than the 405 grain jacketed flat nose. as you see, 298 grains, so it only lost 27 grains. That's very good. I expected more weight loss from the Hornady, especially because Hornadys are known to lose a lot of mass. 297 on the other one, so they both lost about 27 grains or so. Okay, let's just do that one more time. We had 296.8, and then we had 298. Okay, so they lost about 27 grains of lead, and the 405 grain jacketed flat nose lost 50 grains. Okay, so interestingly, the Hornady Flex Tip lost less mass than the 405 grain jacketed flat nose. That's very interesting. I was expecting the Hornady to lose a lot more mass, and because the Hornadys typically, they usually separate. Almost every Hornady bullet that I've ever used, with the exception of the Hornady pistol bullets, the XTP pistol bullets, those hold together well, but a lot of their rifle bullets don't hold together well. Usually the jacket separates from the core because they don't bond the core to the jacket. But somehow these flex tip bullets, whatever they're using to hold the core with the jacket, it seems to be working. Okay, but you can see how much of the lead peeled back. Look at the jacket here. You can see part of the copper jacket, it peeled all the way down to the base. Okay, so it had some pretty extreme expansion on this bullet here, but they were both nose forward in the wood, which is very good. That's what you like to see. All right, and they both had pretty large expansion. As you can see, they're pretty massive, and they're roughly the same size as the 405 grain jacketed flat nose when you compare how big they are. Okay, and we'll do that in a second. Now we're going to go to the 350 grain Barnes TSX bullets, and you can see these bullets are interesting because they did not fully expand. The petals on the TSX bullet did not expand. All of the petals didn't expand, only like half of them. As you see, for some reason, these bullets, didn't expand fully. It's very weird. Okay, if you see on this side here, the petals were like folded over on this side, but then on the other side, they were expanded. Very, very weird. I don't know why that is. All right, as you can see, only like 2/3 of the petals opened up, and then the other side of the petals, they just folded over. You see how they just rounded over like that? I'm not sure why that is. It could be because the wood is a little bit dry, and maybe that had some reason behind that. I don't know. But either way, it caused a big wound channel in the wood. So let's test it. Let's test the weight of these and see. 355 grains, so it added a little weight, and the reason why is because you have a lot of the wood that's embedded in the nose there, as you can see. All right, and that's pretty much what we would expect out of these bullets. 353 grains for this one, and the last one here, 352 grains. Okay, so all of these retained 100% of their weight. Okay, and now what we're going to do is we're going to take some measurements. We're going to see what kind of expansion we got and see how big they expanded. So stay tuned. All right, guys, so now we're going to see what kind of expansion we got. We're going to measure how wide these bullets are after they expanded. We're going to measure their widest point. Okay, so let's see. This is the first bullet here. The Barnes, we got 0.68 on this one. Okay, 0.67. All right, let's go to the other one here now. We got 0.78 on this one. Okay. And then the last Barnes over here, we got 0.78 also. Okay, so about 3/4 of an inch of expansion with the Barnes TSX. Now we're going to move on to the Hornady 325 grain flex tips. These are the two Hornadys, and these are the two jacketed flat nose. You can see that they look like they expanded pretty much the same, but let's see what we got here. Let's check these out. We got 0.78, let's see, 0.76, so about the same expansion as the TSX, 0.75, about 3/4 of an inch. So that's very good. That's a huge. This one's 0.82, so this one actually expanded more than the TSX. 0.88 actually at its widest point, 0.88. I think we have a winner here. 0.9 actually, 0.9 inches at the widest part, 0.91. Oh wow. All right, so almost an inch here on this one, okay? I mean, this thing is just really expanded wide. So now we'll go on to the 405 grain jacketed flat nose, and these just had some monstrous expansion. These expanded the most. As you could see, 0.9 for this one at its widest point, 0.92 almost. Okay, and then here we have the other one. Let's see what this one did. 0.86. Let's see, let's try some different angles here. About 0.9, 0.86 for this one. Okay, so very good expansion on the jacketed flat nose and the Hornady 325 grain flex tip. The Barnes TSX, for whatever reason, they didn't fully expand, and again, that could be just because of the dryness of the wood. As you can see, you have 3 petals here that opened up. 1, 2, 3. Okay, you have these 3 petals here that opened up, but then on the back you have these 2 petals here that folded over the front, and so that's interesting. And then here we have the same thing with this other bullet. Same thing happened here. Okay, we had 3 of the petals open up, and then the 2 petals here folded over. Same thing on this one. I don't know why that is. I don't know if any of you guys know. I'm guessing it's because of the wood, because the wood was very dry. But let me know what you guys think. You know, this is a little bit concerning that it's not, you know, fully expanding, you know, the way it should. You know, all of these petals should be opened up. You know, they shouldn't be folded over like that. You know, so, but because that could affect the way the bullet travels inside of game. You know, if it doesn't expand uniformly and only one side of the bullet expands and the other side doesn't, the bullet will be unstable and it may tumble and, you know, may not hit the vital area that you're aiming for. All right, but the Hornady Flex Tips, as you can see, just absolutely massive expansion on these, and same thing with the jacketed flat nose. I mean, these bullets are just absolutely monstrous. Look at these big bullets, guys. All right, so in conclusion, I was a little bit disappointed by the penetration on this 4570. I was hoping it would be more. But, you know, I kind of expected this from the first test based on what the, you know, first test results were with the barrel loads. You know, I kind of expected the 4570 to have similar terminal ballistics as the 500 Smith & Wesson. So, you know, in conclusion, from, you know, this video and the first video that I did with the barrel loads, and if you haven't seen that video, I'll put a link up above so you can watch that. But in conclusion, the summary of both of these videos that I did with the 4570 is that it doesn't penetrate as much as people think. You know, I think that if you're in the market for a bare defense gun, you're better off carrying a 500 Smith & Wesson or maybe a 460 Smith & Wesson, because you're going to get pretty much very similar penetration, okay, as the 4570. Now, obviously, 4570 will have slightly more penetration, and it's going to be easier to aim, you know, because it's a rifle, but, you know, it's also heavier, and, you know, you have to lug the whole rifle around, versus a big bore revolver is easier to carry. It's lightweight. You can keep it on your person. For hunting, definitely, you know, these bullets would definitely work. You know, the 405 grain jacketed flat nose would work very well against deer, black bear, hog, elk, moose. Any of these bullets would work well for pretty much every North American big game animal. The only thing I would be hesitant to use these bullets on is a brown bear or Kodiak bear or polar bear. I would be a little bit hesitant to use these bullets, obviously, because they're expanding bullets. I would prefer solids for a bear. But these only penetrated through 4 2x10s, which is not that much penetration. That's the same penetration as my 44 Magnum with bear loads, and the same penetration as my 500 Smith & Wesson with soft points, okay? So out of a rifle, I was expecting more performance, but any of these bullets would work fine for most North American big game. So I hope you guys enjoyed this test. I'm going to try to do a repeat at 100 yards and see what happens at 100 yards, what kind of penetration we get at those longer distances. But that's it for this video. Thanks for watching. Take care. God bless. And don't forget the 3 Ps. Prepare, practice, and persevere.